Throughout the phases of the safety lifecycle, audits and assessments for SIS designs, SIS inspections, and SIS tests are required to ensure a complete account of a fully and safely functioning safety system. This is known as a Functional Safety Assessment, or FSA. An FSA is required to ensure the hazards arising from a process and its associated equipment are properly controlled. An FSA is an investigation based on evidence to judge the functional safety achieved by one or more protection layers. This video will cover the 5 different FSA stages and how to use the Functional Safety Assessment module workflows to conduct self-assessments, functional safety assessments, and SIS audits. It will also show reports that result from conducting an FSA. There are 5 different stages for a functional safety assessment. Each stage can be performed depending on where the SIS is in its safety life cycle. Every FSA stage has checklists that go along with it. As the stage number increases, more checklists are added. Stage 1 is performed after the hazard and risk assessment has been carried out, the required protection layers have been identified, and the safety requirement specification has been developed. Stage 1 has the HAZOP verification, LOPA verification, and SRS verification checklists. Stage 2 is carried out after the safety instrumented system has been designed. Stage 2 will add the engineering and design checklist to the total. Stage 3 can be performed after the installation, pre-commissioning, and final validation of the SIS have been completed and the operation and maintenance procedures have been developed. Stage 3 will add the IPL verification, SIS checkout, installation and commissioning, validation, and operations checklist. A Stage 4 FSA can be performed after gaining experience in operating and maintaining the SIF. This will happen after about a couple of years. The maintenance engineering checklist is added to the total. A Stage 5 FSA can be performed after a modification to a SIS or prior to decommissioning of a SIS. The modification and decommissioning checklist will be added as well. Although there are 5 different FSA stages, only stages 3 and 4 are currently required to be performed. To get to the FSA module, you're going to select the module selection drop-down and choose FSA, or Functional Safety Assessments. The home will bring you directly to the dashboard area where you can customize your dashboard, show any reports that you would like to see in the FSA module. Then you're going to see a series of tabs. The Functional Safety Assessment Overview, Functional Safety Assessments, Self-Assessments, SIS Audit, and KPI. Then you're going to see a series of tabs. Your Functional Safety Assessments Overview, Functional Safety Assessments, Self-Assessments, SIS Audit, CPI. Then you're going to see a series of tabs. Your Functional Safety Assessments Overview, Functional Safety Assessments, Self-Assessments, SIS Audit, KPI, CAS Overview. Your Functional Safety Assessments Overview will show you your FSA Checklist completion report. Functional Safety Assessments will show all of the functional safety assessments that is in the enterprise, showing throughout all the sites and units, the SISs. Self-assessments will show all of the self-assessments performed throughout the enterprise. The SIS Audit tab will show all of the SIS audits performed throughout the enterprise. Then the KPI CAS overview, or the Performance Assessment Score. This will show how well you've done with your FSA compared to your self-assessment on the checklists, and then this shows your gap in your conformance as well. In the object tree, you have objects that are pretty familiar. You have enterprise, site, unit, and then SIS, and all FSAs will take place on the SIS object. The new object that you have in the object tree is your SIS audits, and we'll get to that towards the end of the video. For the enterprise object, you're going to see all the same familiar tabs that were just shown. The only new tab is the FSA question library. This is a library that can store any additional questions that would be otherwise asked outside of the interview or the checklists. Your site and your unit objects also have the overview tabs, but their focus is just more narrowed down according to what is in the site and the unit. The sys object is the object that comes from the Instrumented Systems module, and it is here where you can add your FSAs. So in order to add an FSA, just click the Add FSA button, give it an ID, a name, and we'll select Stage 2. Clicking on the FSA will take you directly to the FSA workflow. Once the FSA has been created, you'll be presented with a 9-step workflow. So as we go through this FSA, we'll take a look at each of these steps in this workflow. Because the gasoline stabilization sys has a good example of an FSA, let's look at that one. Upon creation of an FSA, you'll be presented with a workflow. No matter which stage of an FSA that you create, you'll always be presented with the same workflow, the same number of steps. So step 1, that's a self-assessment. Step 2, FSA general information. Step 3, your participants. Step 4, this is the checklists that you're going to assess. Step 5, you have any additional questions that need to be asked. Step 6, interviews that need to be recorded. Step 7, the overall results, summaries. Step 8, it's going to be a collection of all the action items that have been gathered throughout the entire FSA process. Step 9, your final report. And what it does is it takes all of the information from each of these steps and puts it together in one final report that can be printed out. Starting with step 1, the self-assessment. Here you'll see a group of checklists. Depending on the stage of the FSA that you create, you'll see a different group of checklists. The self-assessment allows people at the facility to be able to assess themselves before a formal FSA is conducted. So it allows that particular facility to assess themselves and see where they stand before the actual FSA will be conducted. So in this step, there are a series of checklists. And clicking on the checklist, you can see all the items associated with that checklist. So you have your item number, the description, the assessment status, and the conformance assessment score, and any verification comments that you would like to add. In order to assess these, just click on the field and choose what you would like to add as far as the status and the conformance assessment score. And then you can save your changes. Now notice up at the top you see the color-coded items that are right here according to what whether there's competency or documentation, technical requirements, or maintenance for that particular checklist item. The item numbers refer to the first part being the first checklist in the group and then the first item in the checklist. Throughout the checklists, you can see links to other modules if you need to go back and view any sort of documentation. Closing out the checklist and refreshing it will allow you to see a percent completion. This particular checklist is 100% complete because it has been fully assessed, not necessarily because everything is okay for each of the tasks. Step 2, general information, will show the description, the introduction and background of the FSA, the date that the FSA started, its location, and the document number for the FSA. Step 3, FSA Participants. This will show all of the people that have participated in this FSA in one way or another. So you can have their name, their FSA position, company, phone number, email, any sort of notes as well. For the FSA position, you can select from a series of positions in the list, whatever is applicable. You can add a participant in two ways. One, by adding an FSA participant that is not already a part of your personnel list in the personnel module. And that would be added here. You just type in the name. Or two, you can add somebody that already belongs to your site and is a part of the personnel module by selecting any one of these names and just clicking Add as Participants, and then it will be added to the personnel list or list of participants for that particular FSA. Next, with step 4, is the checklist. The checklist that you see here will correspond with the checklist that you saw in step 1, except this time it is somebody that is on the FSA team that will be evaluating each of these items. So if we went to the same HAZOP verification checklist that we did in step 1, you can see it has all the same tasks, it has the same format, and everything is being evaluated that was evaluated in the self-assessment portion. You can see this is the results from the self-assessment portion, and then over here, your FSA findings, FSA comments, and then the conformance assessment score. This is what is being assessed for the FSA. So that way you can see the difference between the two types of assessments. So you can select among acceptable with action, action required to operate, okay to operate actions required, and then unacceptable, or NA not assessed. These are the same options that were in step 1 as well. So if we select okay to operate actions required and save it, then we're also implying that some actions need to take place. There needs to be some sort of additional action to make it just okay to operate. In this example, the process engineer did not meet the minimum experience requirements, so additional actions needed to take place. In order to add an action item, click on the plus symbol next to the task or item number. Now, when you add an action item, you can either copy from an old action item or something that's already up there, or you can create a new action item. If I were to copy this action item, it would produce the same exact information for this newly created action item as was from the previous action item as well. And then you can choose to change the date. Then you can choose between varying levels or categories or types of urgency that needs to take place for this particular action. State the action requested, whether it's open or closed, and then what the action is. Now the reference contact, that's going to be a list that allows you to choose from the participants of this particular FSA. Save changes. Now creating this action item will create an action item in the action item tracker module. And this action item can be closed out either here or in that action item tracker module. Okay, upon refreshing, you can see once again the percent completion of that particular checklist. So it's an easy way to assess, with one view, how far along you are with the checklist completion portion. The next step is step 5, additional questions. Additional questions gives the FSA chair, or whoever is conducting the FSA, the ability to ask any other questions that are outside of the checklists or outside of interviews as well. Additional questions come from a question library at the enterprise level. Now, in order to add an additional question, you just select Add Additional Questions, select the phase, and select a question. Then you can include any findings, and have any sort of comments as well. When you're done, select Save Changes, and it will automatically assign this question an item number. So this is AQ1, additional question 1. Now, just like with step 4 with the checklists, you can add action items for these questions. For step 6, FSA Interviews, this gives you the opportunity to log any interviews that have taken place throughout the FSA process. So in order to add an interview, select or click on the button, Add Interview. Now here, you can add any interviewer details, and this allows you to select anybody who has participated or anybody that is in the list of participants for this FSA. You can also add an interviewee, and really you can add as many of those as necessary or that has been interviewed. You can add their name, company, role, the location, and any notes that have taken place throughout this interview as well. Upon finding anything out throughout the process of the interview, you can add additional action items to correspond with those findings as well. Next is step 7, your results. Here, it'll show your date completed, any FSA summary, any of the key findings that have taken place, and you can do that for each one of these checklists. And then step 8, all of the action items. So this particular step will show a collection of all the action items that have been gathered. And you can have action items that have been gathered from your step 4 checklists, and it can be from all of your checklists altogether. Step 5, from the additional questions, the action items from there. Then action items also from your interviews. So they all come together here, and you can edit them all in one place as well. So you can open and close these action items as necessary and see everything that has to be done or everything that has been found throughout the process of this FSA. And then the last step, your final report. The final report will show all of the information that has been gathered from each of these various steps. It'll put it together all in one report, including the FSA participants, interviews, questions, action items, and at the very beginning, of course, the key findings in the background. Clicking the print button will allow you to print the entire report, complete with all of its findings, and ready to turn in. Now that we've gone through the process and workflow of how to conduct an FSA, let's take a look at the SIS audit. The SIS audit is conducted at the site level. It allows you to conduct an audit of all of your SISs in that site, and it provides you a 5-step workflow process. So step 1, your audit participants. Step 2, audit summary and introduction. Step 3, audit checklist. Step 4, audit interviews. And step 5, audit final report. You can see that these steps are very similar to the ones provided from the FSA workflow process. And so we'll briefly go through these, but the process for each of these steps are the same as if you were to conduct an FSA workflow for those particular steps. So starting with step 1, audit participants. This step allows you to provide a list of all of the participants that are going to be a part of this audit. It can be contractors or site personnel. In order to add a participant, click on the Add Participant button. It allows you to fill out all of this information for that participant. Step 2 is the audit summary and introduction. This gives you the introduction and background for this particular audit, as well as the summary and key findings for this audit. And these are going to be the key findings for each of the checklists that you're going to see later on. This also allows you to see the start and completed date and location. For step 3, you have the audit checklist. This is a series of checklists for the particular SIS audit that you're doing. And so it has design verification checklist, hazard analysis checklist, maintenance checklist, management of change checklist, operations and maintenance checklist, and roles and responsibilities checklists. Clicking inside one of the checklists allows you to see the list of tasks for that particular checklist. You can fill out the status or category by selecting here. You see in progress, failed, completed, best practice, acceptable, acceptable with action, unacceptable, NA, and not started. Then you can add any verification comments as well. Upon completing the checklist, you can see at an overview level how much has been completed and how much more needs to be completed before the checklists are done. Next is step 4, the audit interviews. This allows you to record any interviews that have taken place, or you can assign who the interviewer is and their role, the interviewee, and you can have multiple interviewees, and then any sort of notes that take place or that are recorded in the process of this interview. Step 5, the final report. This allows you to put everything together all in one report from the previous steps. So here's your background, your audit results, any of the key findings from your checklists, the list of your team members, and then your list of interviews that have taken place. Clicking on the print button will allow you to print out this particular report. So if you print to PDF and you select print, you can save the report and it comes out in this format. So far in this video, we have discussed the 5 different stages of an FSA. We've shown the workflow for the FSA. We've also shown the workflow for SIS audits. The recording of all this information culminates in 3 separate forms. For the FSA workflows, you see the FSA final report. For the SIS audits, you see the SIS audit final report. And the third way is through graphs or pictures appearing in the enterprise, site, unit, and SIS objects. For example, if we were to click on a SIS object and show the KPI CAS overview, this particular view shows the 4 categories: documentation, maintenance, technical requirements, and competency for the checklists. These are the 4 categories in which all checklist items will fall under, and this will show a comprehensive report comparing the self-assessment score with the FSA score on those checklists, respectively. Through these reports and KPIs, one can effectively show the results of the assessment and close any gaps found for a SIS from its inception to any modifications and ultimately to its